Hi, everyone, and welcome to Birch Bark Editing in Conversation with poet Peggy Dobreer and Janet Fitch. This evening promises to be full of beautiful poetry and rich ideas. We would love for you to keep your videos on so we can continue to build community, but please make sure your microphones are muted again. I want to begin by thanking my overqualified guest assistant, David Orr, and asking him to put his website in the chat so all of you can see more about him on your own. I'll add that he is a visual artist based in California. His work has been shown extensively in the United States and internationally. His independent film projects have aired on Channel 4 Britain and PBS, and his work has also appeared in Art Daily, BuzzFeed, and so many more places. Go look at his website, please. There's gorgeous images there, and there's more about David there. Thank you, David. Birch Bark Editing is a two-woman operation made up of myself and my partner, Catherine Parnell, who had the good fortune of the Canadian border opening and is somewhere without internet, probably in the water as we speak. We are committed to helping writers find their voice. You can read more about our services at our website. And one of our very favorite reasons for having this business is creating literal opportunities to hear authors' voices. We host free InConversation events to help make this happen. So please visit our events page to see the next event we have lined up, and there's another one coming soon. We're just simply delighted that you could join us tonight to hear a vibrant conversation with Peggy and with Janet. If you have questions, please post them to David or privately in the chat, and we'll make sure they are passed on to Peggy and Janet. I'll begin by introducing Janet Fitch, who will be carrying the conversation with Peggy, and then I'll introduce you to Peggy. Janet Fitch is an American author and teacher of fiction writing. She is the best-selling author of the novels White Oleander, an Oprah Book Club selection translated into 24 languages, Paint It Black, and the epic novels of the Russian Revolution, The Revolution of Marina M, and Chimes of a Lost Cathedral. White Oleander and Paint It Black have been made into feature films, and a film based on her noir short story, The Method, will be shot in September 2021. Her short stories, essays, and reviews have appeared in the Los Angeles Times, Los Angeles Review of Books, Los Angeles Noir, Vogue, Shondaland, and other publications. She has taught creative writing at the Community of Writers, USC's MPW program, Esalen Institute, A Room of Her Own, and Arojo, and regularly offers online writing talks on her Facebook author page, Writing Wednesdays. You can purchase any of Janet's books at the bookshop link that David's providing for you in the chat, and that supports independent bookstores, of course. Peggy Dobreer is a poet, parent, and former choreographer who brings movement, meditation, mystical traditions, visual craft, and an enduring love affair with language to her E=MC2Bodied Poetry Workshops, which is Embodied Poetry Workshops. Dobreer's Forbidden Plums was selected by Glass Lyre Press for its 2021 chapbook release. She has two earlier collections from Mood Tide Press, Drop and Dazzle from 2018, and The Lake of Your Bones 2012. Peggy has two Pushcart Prize nominations and was awarded Downey Symphony Orchestra's 2017 Poetry Matters Prize in celebration of a 60-year collaboration between the city of Downey and NASA. Peggy's poems have been featured in the Aeolian Harp Folio Series 1 and 5, and in journals such as Cultural Weekly, The Rise Up Review, Perrine's Fountain, Malpay Review, and LA Yoga Magazine. She has been interviewed for Poetascape, The Poets Cafe on KPFK, and the LA Poetry Examiner. Ms. Dobreer is a member of Beyond Baroque Literary Arts Center and the Long Now Foundation. You can read more about her on her website and find the opportunity to participate in her slow lightning morning meditations on her website. You can purchase Forbidden Plums at bookstore.org on Peggy's website from her publisher. And best of all, we'll just begin with Peggy's reading. Thank you.
Thank you, Maxie. So welcome everybody. I'm so excited. My little heart is beating so fast, and taking my own advice, I'm going to start with a deep breath. And I just want to say, what a thrill it is. Never did I think I'd be in conversation with Janet Fitch when I was watching Oprah Winfrey and saw her interview so many years ago. It's really Janet's idea that Slow Lightning started. And so, Janet, so grateful. Thank you. Uh, it's a joy. And I want to thank, of course, Kat and Maxie for doing this. Um, I haven't met Kat yet, but I've watched some of these interviews and they are wonderful. And I feel like I'm getting to know her. Please do avail yourself of them. Each conversation is a little, somebody's point of view into writing, and so useful putting them all together. So please do go there and enjoy the website. And, as somebody who has been producing poetry events for 20 years, if you can make a contribution to Birch Bark, please do. It's not thankless work because you're bringing wonderful minds together, and it's such a joy. But it doesn't pay the bills. So if you can contribute $3 or 300, please do, and show my friends your gratitude. And then also, I just want to say thanks to David. So yeah, David really is overqualified to simply be admitting you. Um, uh, Again, Janet introduced us some months ago. He was looking for a poet to do a collaboration, and within 3 weeks, meditating together every morning and meeting and editing in real time and just talking about our philosophies, we came up with a book which just got its first publication. So we're going to have a feature in Cultural Weekly coming up soon. And I want to start by sharing one of those poems. So, David, will you put up the picture? So, this poem is entitled Twilight. I am the size of the point on a walnut, where two halves are joined inside the shell. I am the length of falling when a child slips into a well at twilight. I am the edge of a terraced mountain in Tibet and the sky that fans out above each shelf. I am as fallible as a single stalk of dandelion in harsh wind. I am the daughter of the globe, the fire of the sun, and the rings of dust around any black hole in space. I am a sliver of my mother's grief and the outer dimensions of my daughter's dream. And this is Forbidden Plums. And again, I need to say thank you to Brendan Constantine, who allowed me to use this beautiful um, collage of his. Of course, Venus with her arms. She still has her arms intact, I think, because she's been safer at home. But you can see she is surrounded. This is actually the SARS virus. It's quite beautiful, really. And so I'm going to start with the first poem in the book. It's called Time and Promise. And it was actually suggested as um, the title poem, but I went another direction. Time and Promise. When the wax has been pulled and filed to a shape most pleasing to the carver's hand, when the kiln is fired and the flask set dead center, when the heat rounds the silken core, and in those first few hours the mold does ooze and grimace, roasting away from the unforgiving glare, we sneak a look and waves peel across the studio. Green folds into carbon black on steel armature, burst and sizzle, bites of time, hiss of song and industry. Then the latch is unhinged. Tongs grab clumsy, mittened hand. Torch is lit. Crucible brought to the self-same heat for the poor. The steady draw vacuum pump pulls metal ringward. Empty channels fill to sprue. Then water hits the rim and white cylinder goes calcium stream. The yet dull golden gift plunks the sink, unpolished tine and promise. So anybody ever designed jewelry? So this is I want to shout out to Maxine Chernoff. This was a class at Camera Obscura where I used to teach, and we were to write a docu-poem. We were to share something we knew how to do. So that's Tyne and Promise. The next piece is called Phantom in Sight. And anybody else bump into ghosts while you were sheltered in place? Yeah, I see some nods out there. Phantom in Sight, and I didn't think of it at the time, but I was thinking it's in my sight, but it's also an insight, right? When we see a ghost. Awakened by machines starting up in the corner of the room. Apparitions are closer now, serenaded by rain awning toward my window. More power to the poles, love of country gone viral, sheets of holy heaven sent sideways toward the glass, leaping forward without resolve for every error wrought. There is no view through a glass darkly. There is no invitation to unshelter in place. This separated scandal of missed marks and unwed shores. It wriggles in restrictions imposed. Whatever leap I might have made rests in a messy nest of whiskered birds. Clouds gone quiet in billows and striations. I will miss this forever if I pass in seclusion, roomed in a safety that swallows me full. The cords between us tighten with every flight, every closed door, each elbowed elevator peg. At every unwept tear, I blink back. He sees me naked and marked. I wobble without promise, boxed and shirted, searching sideways with my nose to the pane. This is a virus I won't survive one more time. But I wonder why I don't just play my last hand and let myself go out like that, with all my missed marks bundled into one last straw. And so the last poem I'm going to read in this section before we get to hear from Janet and we start jabbering. This is of a middle temper. And it was originally the title of the book. It's interesting how many possible titles are in here. Of a middle temper. And furthermore, you don't have to go to Gethsemane on every point. A hair's breadth is just a hair's breadth. An inch is simply an inch, need not become a mile. Don't construct elegy. Don't make mythical proportion out of some small synchronicity. Listen with your skin and bone. Ears have so little purpose in the hunger of the heart. Your power source cannot be renewed in this position. Pawn your indecision for whatever you can get. Be no more patient. Be whole in your singularity. Rest in the crest of nothingness. Your nothingness is everything. Everything begins again at go.
Wonderful, Peggy. I have questions and also I have audience questions. So we're going to keep you busy. Um, First of all, this is a book that was written in the first 40 days of the pandemic, of the lockdown. Have you, is that your normal rhythm? I mean, that's pretty quick, isn't it?
Very quick and probably a little haphazard. Um, but here we had all this time on our hands, and I felt like it was such a gift. I'm a single parent, and I work 2 to 3 to 4 jobs at a time. And suddenly I was off the freeways and at home with all my books and all my old poems. And I just, and all my nerves about what was happening. And I just decided to put that time to use because it was such a gift. Not all the poems were generated in that time, but they were all finished and then brought into a book, and it just took shape quickly. Um,
Hmm.
I decided to go for it. I saw a submission came across my desk, and I just sent it in, and it won. And then I was like, oh no, nobody has ever read these poems before. I've never had, many of them had never been in front of an audience. So you guys are first.
Yeah, that was one of the questions that came in was about, do people edit your work? Do you edit? I mean, the editing process. How does that work? Like, what's the whole process?
Well, so if I compare this to the last 2 books, my first book took 12 years, to write. I was a dancer, I was injured, and I just didn't I couldn't even sit still and make jewelry, right? I couldn't sit for long periods of time. And I really started writing to kind of heal myself, and then boom, it just took off. But the first book took 12 years, and so individually those poems got workshopped. They got read in open readings. That's a luxury we didn't have during the pandemic. you know so a lot of these poems weren't read out loud, but normally each poem gets written individually, goes through its own process, and then afterward I look for an arc and how poems talk together and create a book. Where this one, it had a trajectory from the beginning, which was to describe what we were going through, this incredible fracture, rupture, longing for familiarity. And I know for many people, there was a lot of freedom in it that they hadn't had before. They got to spend time with their loved ones instead of, who's going to make the coffee and you're out the door, and then you're making dinner plans. So it was just, there was time, and I threw it together. And but normally, once a book is together and each poem has been individually edited, the whole book will go to an editor. And this one didn't have that luxury. And in fact, this particular um, publisher didn't send it to an editor. So really, I edited it 3 times myself. Um, and I would say there's one poem in here I'd still like to do some work on, but I won't tell you which one.
Are you somebody who just always never feels finished?
Yeah,
You
and I
change things?
It's interesting because that was the same feeling as a dancer. You never have a product, right? And as a writer, you have a product, but it usually takes years to get to, right? And so that was one of the reasons I took up jewelry, because you sit down and you make something and it's done and you can give it away, and it's a finished thing. I love that feeling. It's like washing your car or doing the dishes. It's really simple, and there's a beginning and an end to it. And yeah.
Well, that was one of the questions, was like the journey of the pandemic, both artistically and personally. It sounds like this is more like dance in the sense that um, you don't have years to work on things, that it's more.
Well, it's interesting, improv is my background. And I early on met Steve Nachmanovich, who wrote Free Play: Improvisations in Life and Art, and it really became a foundational text for how I developed all kinds of artwork, from jewelry on, and um, so yeah, I got to really be in that improvisational space and just make something happen. And the thing about an improv, though, is once it's happened, it's gone. People can talk about it, but it's their reflection in it, and it takes on its own life. It has a life on stage, and then the aftermath is its own life. And but I think the improvisation of writing, it's an improvisation until it's in a book, and then it's a done deal. And people get to return to it. I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah, it does. And then the I thought we would go ahead and read another group of poems
Okay,
before we continued.
beautiful.
Can we?
Can we? I think I can.
Yeah.
I just wanted to see everybody's faces for a minute and say hello. So I'm going to read a poem called On the Wheel. And when I first started out in poetry, I was a very poor single mommy, and I couldn't take any classes. And then I heard that Iowa Writers Workshop offered a summer workshop online, and I took it for about 3 years in a row. It was amazing. And Kwame Dawes was one of the teachers. You never get to interact with the teachers. They give a 20-minute talk, a craft talk, and then they send you prompts, and then you're on your own, right? But it was just wonderful. And so there's a quote here from Kwame Dawes, but it's not from one of his poems. It's from his lecture. And I just loved it when he said it, because he was just talking and then he just slipped into this poetic phrase, and it was just wonderful. So I wrote it down. On the Wheel. The moment when vision and craft marry, that makes you keep coming back, keep coming back, keep coming back to poetry. There is clay in our palms, each and only unto the potter. We have been engraved with fractals of functional brilliance. What I mean is the whole Megillah, that any two of these many billion could occupy this complexity, this locus of passion, tunnels of inequity, and yes, it cannot roll downhill. How in love we hide and swap hours with dawn, make a wing of our wish, a beacon of terror, our haunted melody. You can blame this apocalypse on my obligation to tenderness. So a pony trumps a horse any day. A field of geese fly against a violet scrim. Black magic erupts from the firestorm, from the risen living shift of us, till there is no now left to risk. Um, I think during the writing of that poem, I was beginning to lose my sense of time. In the pen, 2, 3 months in, when we thought it was opening up, and then boom, it fell back, right away. And this is called Fool's Gold in the Eyes of Love, and it starts with a quote from a doctor named Richard Selzer, who writes beautiful, beautiful prose about the body. Fool's gold in the eyes of love, sack to tote my runny vitals graveward, first playground, last prison. This is my body, this house of peril, sack to tote my runny vitals graveward, first playground, last prison. Cellmate of loss and drum, scars and mind lapses, slip and falls, gardens of veritas and light, you plant my coarsened chamber, a germ so deep it won't be washed by rain or snow. Your sleet of restraint, seeds of hope where none were sown, where nothing before spread such suchness in bright full tones. You hold me in places unknown and familiar, your pitched grace gavelled. Gentle and flowery fulcrum, may it break over me like a dawn's gloried spark, like a gemstone in a day's quandaried fervor. This is my body, invisible acre, moon lander, cold star of stars coming out on this dark corona, this black depth of coal shaft, kettle bottom thunker, once leaf hewn and shade provoking, provider, now boom lowered, calling our courage back, flesh and chant, rutilated breath, delicate provider, insider, and long left out. Every once in a while, thank you guys. I love seeing you. I love seeing your faces. Um, um, yeah, there's when you live alone, it's a whole different pandemic than if you're married or partnered, or have children still in the house. I didn't see my daughter for 9 months, and we're very, very close. Anyway, this is a kind of an Easter poem. It's called What You Can't See, You Can't See. Right between the hoorahs and the radios, out back by the whitewashed fence and the moon in Cancer, reflected in the ripples on the lake, sore losers and right well winners wait to ride a tower of giraffes, straining to see their feet through dark clouds scudding the foothills. If you listen closely, there is one true sound, like a baby laughing. It grips and loosens, comes like an avalanche of joy, like lovers gasping for a song while the ice shelf melts or gets hung above the larder for spices and herbs. If a rabbit pulls your eyes out of the hat, you will witness multi-facets of time, and preferences of the unseen will shift shape into life force. The existential Easter hunt is a long line from Sunday. And when we all come clear, the grass in the basket will stop its neon hue, nest eternity in its lyrical sphere. No one will fake weep at this leaving. No one will squeeze the cat just to make him cry. One more. So this is the poem out of which the title Forbidden Plums came. Oh, and there's a little story about plums here. Do we have time for a little story? So we had a big plum tree in the corner of our yard growing up. And it was my mother's rule that you couldn't pick the plums in June and July because if you did, they were sour. And then you'd toss them on the grass and the ants would come and the birds would come and then they'd eat all the good plums. So in June and July, we would hang pie tins in the trees and we would just sit there and watch the plums. And then, because they were forbidden. But in August, we got to eat all the delicious plums. Anyway, forbidden plums. Or one blossom of century plant crashing into the sky from its aloe bed. A head falling slightly off the edge. There is laughter vast as an Irish moor, warm as red dirt in sun. A mug of old-fashioned shaving cream swallows a brush of fine boar's hair. An escape is made through an underground tunnel, two lone bodies funneling into afternoon, glowing into evening, sharpening to a fixed point. The point is this: I could have leapt into crematorium blues. I could have ridden all that way searching, temple my prayers like a ghost in a cranial prison. I could have culled springtime from that long shuttered winter. Then sirens went off. The neighboring hoodlums came rubbing on the beat of a tin drum carved into a message. A vase of hyacinth fell over with the weight of limping stems. A long-held privacy was marked for rapture, and an ailing aunt passed quietly into air. She, an unusual child, whose freckles disarmed the wholly gathered, held a forbidden plum in her mouth until a crimped light broke through a small window. You could see one bright flower in a crib of soft mud, like a solitary cloud, wisping for a miracle. Can't hear you.
I have a bunch of questions from your audience here. And one of them just makes a lot of sense, is of all, you teach poetry. You've been writing for a long time. And the question is, of all the pieces of advice you offer your students, is there one that you yourself struggle with?
Um, Gosh, I just feel like I struggle with all of it. I think we mention the things that we mention in workshopping because they've caught us up in the past, right? And so we're looking for ways around them. And also, I don't feel like I really teach poetry. I feel like I provide opportunities for people to um, um, investigate through their body what is present in their minds that wants to be written. And sometimes we think we should write such and so. We need to go write a sonnet. We should write this poem about our mother. We should do this about that. But I think, I guess it's the way that poetry grabbed onto me. You know, I had this injury and I lost my creative outlet. And dance is the farthest thing from language, right? But I knew how to access creative juice from the body as a dancer. And I worked for a long time to see how can I offer that practice to writers. And it doesn't come easy. It's not like you come to one class and you get it. It's the Dobreer method. No, it's a practice that you come and I'm just providing a space for you to enter into it. And it just really works, you know. It really works. Listening is, I think, the most important tool uh, that a poet has. And not just listening to others, not listening to other people's work, but listening to the self and what's all around you. And yeah, I need to listen more. I talk a lot. It's kind of a occupational hazard as a public speaker. um, but yeah, so I feel like that's what I bring is more an invest help me people, investigatory, is that the word? An
Mhm.
investigatory process for you to access what's available to you to write. And some people don't need any help getting there. They wake up there. But some of us who do it regularly can use help from time to time to sink in and go deeper and deeper.
Yeah, there's a wonderful quote. I think it's from Twain, is it? Who said, "A writer is someone for whom writing is harder than it is for most people."
Right. That's so true. So yeah,
Because
I
you,
mean, I didn't write well as a child. I learned language late, for whatever. And so, like I said, it really was a long distance for me to go from dance to writing. And the hardest thing to get over is the insecurity of it because language is conceptual and dance is actual, it's physical. It's like, you know, I throw out a phrase and I say, is it flying, right? And that's a concept. But if I make a leap, I'm either flying or I'm falling. There's no concept, it's in front of your face. And so trying to bring some of those images um, of the body to the page, it it I don't know what it does. Janet, what does it
that
do?
was interesting.
You're there all the time.
I noticed that one of the questions that came in was, what would your poetry be without your dance background? How would it be different?
I'm not sure it would exist.
Hmm.
I'm not sure that it would exist. I know that it would be less sensorial. I'm sure I would think it might be more narrative, um, which I don't know if that's good or not. You know, a lot of people suggest more narrative work to me. And I do work that way from time to time, but it's not where I live. I live more imagistically. I feel like I'm maybe more Degas than Modigliani, if you know what I mean. More
Hmm.
more Van Gogh than Kandinsky. You know, I like when images blend into each other. I like that dreamy place. Um, a la Paul Celan, or that that genre. I can't think of any names now, but that genre. Teresa's smiling. She's recognizing something.
So sound is very important to you.
Sound is important, rhythm is important, and for me, the visual on the page is really important. I know a lot when I'm mentoring writers and they want to know how to put a poem on the page, I see it visually, and I feel very close to my dance choreography work in editing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that was one of the questions that came in, is what does the first draft look like? And how do you sculpt? What do you think about as you're sculpting your poems?
That's kind of what a first draft might look like.
Wow. Not so fast, not so fast.
Oh, okay.
Put it up again.
Oh, wait, what's this morning's first draft? That was just notes. Okay, here's a first draft from this morning.
So what do you tend to do? Like, what are you looking for as you read that first draft? What are you considering?
Well, the first things I consider is the content. So I'm looking for what images are striking, like where is it working, right? I want to know that. I also want to know where it's languishing, what's not clear. I also have something that I look for, which I call building trust. Buddy Wakefield calls it building trust. I used to think of it as a reveal. In theater, we would call it a reveal, when you're seeing a character move through time and space and he's acting out, and then suddenly you'll get a monologue that will tell you what the motivation was behind it, and you can move deeper into that character when you know that. So I look for those places that are building trust with your audience, where you've let them in. Then after that, I look at shape, like, what is this poem suggesting? If it looks like it's falling into tercets, I might try to bring that out. If the lines are running into each other, I'll say, well, maybe this is prose. Sometimes just my hand makes a margin. It's like I have a thought and then a margin, and I'll make space for that margin, for that thought on the paper. And that sometimes goes into creating it on the page. So
do you think that's part of your dance background, that the space is important, and the rhythms, the pattern?
Absolutely. And I write really differently if I get a big piece of paper and sit on the ground with it. Sometimes I paint and then I write into the painting all around it.
Wow.
That has a different feeling. Yeah, I love doing concrete poems. You guys, that's a wonderful game to play with yourself, is to pick a surface and then write a poem to put on that surface.
Wow.
That's somehow about the surface. So yeah, it's very spatial for me. And I don't know if that's good or bad. It's just different.
It's what you do.
It's what I do. And I think, I see Brendan Constantine in the house now. You weren't here when I thanked you for the beautiful book cover, but since you're here, I will. But Brendan was my teacher for 10 years. So, one of my hardest things is not teaching his stuff, right? But where was I going with this? I got sidetracked. I forgot what I was talking about.
I have a question. I have a question, and then I think some of these people have questions that David's been taking. So the question I had was, what is slow lightning? You're doing something now called slow lightning.
So slow lightning was Janet's idea. The title was Lucian's idea, but during the pandemic, when we were facing the inauguration and everything, the insanity was happening in Washington, Janet called me and she said, why don't you do your meditation every day? And I went, because it's my private time, And then I think it was my mother's birthday, January 12th, and I was so desolate. And I was like, Mom, and I just heard, just do it. Like my mom never talked to me. So for me to hear that, and it's not like I heard a voice, it's just I got this message, just do it. So I did it. And what
So
it
what
is,
is it?
it's just a time where we come together and we do about 6 or 7 minutes of guided meditation that are meant to stimulate all of the 21 senses that we learn as movers, as dancers, as kinesthetic beings. Most people learn 5 senses, but there are 21. And when you do, you have to activate all 21 of those senses to be an effective contact dancer. And so they're just kind of a part of me. And so we're like tying the two sides of the brains together. We're connecting our breath to our enteric system. We're thinking of ourselves being grounded in the earth and drawing up energy through the chakras. You know, we other times we connect ourselves to the cosmos and we think about, you know, letting our ideas float out and receiving. And it just puts you, oh, and now I'm remembering what I was going to say about learning from Brendan. He has a way of just confusing you, giving you so much information that you just get really confused, and your mind just goes boom and opens up a little to some place you didn't expect that you were going. And aren't surprises like that? They're just
Yeah.
suddenly you're in a new place
I'm
because
amazed that when you do the every morning, for those to give an overview, every weekday morning, Peggy does an open meditation and with a writing prompt that she's calling slow lightning, because the paradox, I guess, kind of blows your mind. But it's amazing. So from 8:30 to 9:15. So there's a meditation and then there's a prompt. And even if you've never written poetry before, there's some of the people here who are doing this. You find yourself writing a little poetry or a paragraph that could be a prose poem. But it's more, I really missed it. I went without for a couple of days. I was away and I really missed it because it's kind of like taking your temperature each day. Like you don't even know what's on your mind. Um,
it
it's
is.
like the opposite of a diary entry in some ways, because it's not necessarily what I ate and what I did yesterday kind of thing.
Right.
Um, so anyway,
I
anybody
love
who's
what you said
interested.
about I love what you said about taking your temperature, Janet, because it's like taking your emotional, psychic, spiritual, and actual physical temperature, right?
Yeah, yeah, and
And
it's interesting that that Peggy never repeats herself. That's what I was gonna get at, as far as the improvisation. These these meditations are poetry as well, and they never repeat. You just think of them every day. You come up with something. And
yeah,
is
so
that the way
I'm getting
you're
it the same way you're getting the poetry in the morning.
right?
And we do this guided meditation, which is what opens up some, you know, starts firing certain synapses, and again, it's different every day. And then we go into absolute silence where maybe there was a question or something that we're following, and everybody goes someplace different, but it seems like there's always some thread that sort of weaves its way through the group, even though every day the group is different,
Yeah,
right?
it's very interesting. There's a little
Yeah,
synchronicity is very interesting.
yeah.
Well, so if people want to do it, they can contact you on your website.
Yeah, or they can just drop me an email and then I send out a link the following day. And I generally send out a link every day for people who want to be on the list, because it just comes to the top and it's easy to get
Yeah,
to in
so
the morning.
contact Peggy if that's something that interests you, you're curious about. Um, And then I do believe that there's another poem that you'd like to.
Is this my closing poem?
Do you want to, or do we have anything,
What's our
David? Do we
time?
have any questions in the chat?
Well, I just want to thank everybody again for being here and tolerating my my loss of train of thought from time to time. When they said 5 o'clock, I'm like, that's my nap time. Um, but anyway, it's just been so great to see everybody, and thank you. And yeah, come by, Beth. Look at you. I can't see everybody, so but
Oh,
yeah,
here's,
just
I
wanted to
see a
thank.
question. Can Peggy talk about the relationship between the meditations and forbidden plums? For
Yeah, so
yourself, how does it work?
right. So yeah, so when I want to put things together, I meditate about it and how should I do this? I mean, I don't know. Most of these poems um most of these poems are founded in silence. Unless I've written them in other people's workshops, that's the place that I start. And, for some people, that doesn't work. I would imagine but I have a mind that's going all the time. So to sink into silence helps me find something new, right? Helps me find something other than the monkey business going on all the time in my head.
Right.
Because if I write from that, and I wrote from that a lot in my first 10 years of poetry, there was one thread through them all. And I think when you go to your deeper resources, and like I said, many people can do that on their own. Um, their mind doesn't work that way. Um, but when you do that quiet, it's just a guide for me, and it really does work. And even when I go to say, okay, how do I put this book together? It's like, what's this book about? And I knew it was about the pandemic, and I knew it was about all the losses that I was feeling. But I was also sort of feeling a kind of a honeymoon period of all the time I had to talk to friends, all the time I had not to be on the phone, not to be on the freeway. And but there was also all that angst about what was going on in the world, and more so about the government than the pandemic for me. And so I would meditate a lot, and then poems pop in, ideas, conceits just come to mind from the silence for me. So it works for me.
And so there's one question about dance. Do you still dance and the
Yes,
somatic
I do.
relationship?
Who wants to
I
dance?
can say this, that Peggy and I have done this, and Peggy has done this at Arojo, and we should be doing it now. Things are opening up. We're even thinking of finding a place. There's an event that's going to be happening in San Pedro on a regular basis, and it's in a park, and we could maybe even do this. But Peggy has taught this thing where you move and language starts emerging as you're moving. And I've always really segregated movement and language.
Right.
So to be able to start moving and then have language emerge,
Right.
it's like a kid narrating their play. It's very interesting how that works. Well, we're moving. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, that contact improv is a nonverbal conversation between two dancers sharing a center of gravity. So after I did that for many years, I worked with a woman named Simone Forti. Some of you may know her, fabulous dancer in New York. She's in her 90s and she's still touring as a dancer. Um, and she did something called locomotion, where you would dance and then whatever you would find some still point And then suddenly you're at the door listening and you start to tell that story, right? And so Janet and I started, she built a dance studio. We started doing this just for fun. And it taught me how I could bring what I know from dance to writing, right? Because I don't have the MFA in writing to teach the history of poetry or the forms of poetry. But I know that I have a sort of a I have a through line to just creative process through this movement work, and I feel so blessed to have fallen into it. Contact started at Bennington in '72, and I just happened to bump into somebody who knew about it. It was a handful of people, and it was a lab because it was a new form, right? And so that's how I approach teaching poetry, as a laboratory. We get in the room together, we find the silence. If we were outdoors, we would be moving to find that same center, but we do it imagistically online.
Yeah.
But yeah, I
So
can't wait to actually do it in the
yeah,
body.
this is something, there's a bell in San Pedro that rings once a month. It's the Korean friendship
Peace
bell,
bell
11:30 in the park in San Pedro with a friendship bell. And we're going to go on the 4th,
and
the
dance and
first
write.
Saturday of the month, every month. And we're just going to give it a try and see what we come up with. So we're pretty close to time. So Peggy has one more poem. And thank you
I'm gonna,
everybody for coming. This has been such a treat. So go ahead.
yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, so this is the last poem in the book, and it was added late. And many of you have heard me talk about my friend Pirla Batala, who used to sing with Leonard Cohen. And she does this wonderful House of Cohen, and where she sings all of his songs. And um, this poem was called Dance Me Through the Panic when I started it. And it just didn't fit in this book. And at some point, I got the idea that I should change the title to Gathered Safely In. And then it seemed to really fit in the book. So this is for my friend Perla. And it starts with an epigraph from Leonard Cohen. Dance me through the panic till I'm gathered safely in. If I end you till the dance of time, will the dance continue, or will time stop it? Will it circle back, spin retro causation, take its own sweet punctuation, mark of a question, call me you by my given name? The syllables look right past me. The wrongs number, the mountains burn, rage flares, masking in the streets, streets roped off, hope, loss, rot. If I end you till the dance of time, will you ration me like paper? Will you roast me earthwise, a forest mouthed in honey crisp? Will the eye of your apple seek early emancipation? What is slavery after all, if not for cages? What are babies, if not borders of our bodies flung wide ajar, open, open? What is open, if not action, a vote, if not marvel, a shift? If I end you till the dance of time, will we gather safely in?
Peggy,
Thank
thank you
you guys.
so much for such a beautiful reading and for joining us at Birch Bark Editing. Janet, thank you for hosting the conversation. David,
Thank you.
thank you for all things technical. I know, Peggy, you want to say thank you to your people really quickly, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, I just am loving seeing people. And yeah, I just want to say thank you. I love you. I miss you all terribly. And until next time.
Thank you, everybody, so much for coming and for hanging out a couple extra minutes with you. Peggy, what a beautiful reading. Thank you for your time. Uh, don't forget to pick up your own copy of Forbidden Plums. Every poem in it is this wonderful. So please go out there and support Peggy for her beautiful art. Join us for Slow Lightning. I, for one, can say I feel as if it's changed my life.
Oh, thank you, Maxie. And I love that you're there. And yeah, just thanks again for doing this. It's really amazing. And let's all go and make our contributions.
Yes, let's.
Yeah, we want you to do many more of these. And some of these people right here are really good candidates. So
Thank you
thank
so much.